real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Rome is with you. Today we are going to be talking about the world of police informants, gang culture, and criminal reform. For that, I have Paul Derry on the show. Paul is an author, interactive speaker, and former RCMP informant and agent, known for his unique perspective on topics of recidivism and change. Paul lived a lifestyle of a career criminal, going from petty drug dealer at 15 years old to ending his career with a Hells Angels ordered murder. He shares his thoughts on overcoming obstacles, anxieties, and the excuses used not to change for good. He is also the author of several books, with a few more on the way, two of which I just finished reading. First one was Treacherous, How the RCMP Allowed a Hells Angel to Kill. And the other one was Inside a Police Informant's Mind. So welcome, Paul.
Hey, how you doing, Nathan?
I'm doing good. I want to start also by saying thank you for sending over the books. They were awesome. I highly recommend them to anyone that, especially getting into the gang world, but cops in general. There's a lot in there you can learn, from just talking to people to interviewing skills. Like it all overlaps. So very good books. And I can't wait to read a few more that you got coming out.
You bet. Inside and Police Informant's Mind was written specifically with the idea of aiming at police officers and mostly source handling. So the first part of the book was, as you could tell, it was about how informants are.
Yeah.
And then the second part was what a good handler can be.
Yeah.
And what it takes to be a good handler. From my perspective, of course. But.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Who better to ask than the person that is interacting with the handler? So, I mean, you've got the firsthand knowledge. So I wanted to start just kind of talking a bit about you. There's a lot of stuff in the books. Some of it overlaps a bit. So you can it's almost like a continuation of the story of sorts. And I recommend people get the book because it'll fill in a lot of the gaps. But I want to start with you. And if you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, but what led you into a life of crime? So 15 years old, what's happening in your world, peer group, family, and what decisions are made or not made, maybe that led you into kind of this career path to start?
I think there was kind of a multitude of things. For 24 years now, I've kind of contemplated my life, obviously, and 19 years of trials. You get to hear everybody pick apart your life, besides the media. I mean, just in courtrooms in general. But for me, it started off, the rebelliousness, I guess, is what I would say I started with. So not so much crime world as much as the rebelliousness started when I started reading. I was a very shy kid. So I started reading books like the first one was the book The Outsiders. That was, it was an emotional book in a lot of ways, and a lot of people have read it. If they're around my age, for sure. But it ended up taking me into a world of gangs and runaways and that kind of thing. And I liked taking on identities and roles back then, even, and because I was shy, it was easier for me to pick a character out of a book and pretend to be that character. And unfortunately, I always typically, but with the women, I picked that soft, gentle character. But anywhere else, I kind of picked the bad guy. So it kind of ended up taking me on a journey anyway in that direction.
Okay.
That was at 15. That was pre-15. So by 15, I had been approached by the RCMP to just do to sell with my drug dealer, basically. And that really propelled me into the criminal world. But before that, it was a lot of just rebelliousness. I was on a military base, so.
Yeah, so your dad was in the Navy?
He was in the Navy, and then he remustered into the Air Force. So we went from Halifax as a Navy family to Greenwood, Nova Scotia, which is an Air Force base. much different, back then. That was 40 some years ago. So fitting a Navy family fitting into an Air Force base was kind of a different kind of thing back then.
Well, how was your home life? And because you're talking about being a rebel and kind of picking these characters. So, do you have any siblings? Are you kind of a loner? Are is what's going on in your world that makes you want to pick this kind of character type?
Well, I had two brothers, both joined the Navy. I didn't want to get my hair cut, ended up falling out anyway. So maybe should have took the Navy route. I don't know. No, I had a good family. My parents were loving. My dad was in the Navy, so he was away a lot, but a great family. When I was in prison, I did a 7-year bid. When I was in prison, the first thing the psychologists want to do is blame everything on your parents.
Hmm.
It's like, and I'm like, this wasn't my mom or dad. I mean, like they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Raised the best they could. But so I had a good family. We had, we went to beaches, we hung out. In the summer, we did everything a normal family does, go on car trips. And
That's one of the things that I always find interesting especially when you see things in the news and they'll say, this person is from this poor family and they're single parent and so on and so forth. It's like a lot of our guys involved in especially the organized crime world,
yeah,
a little more elevated, they come from like good homes and their parents try to send them to school and
yeah,
get them a nice car and stuff. So they have all these means provided for them.
yeah,
And it's always interesting to see like, well, why would someone choose this lifestyle then? So if it's not out of necessity, like you're not doing it for protection or for that family culture, so why choose that lifestyle?
yeah. I think some of it too for me was, I found out probably around, I don't know, around puberty, 12, 14, whatever it was, uh, that my biological father was somebody different than the father that was raising me. I don't know why they
Mm.
waited that long to. Yeah, I guess that would be a parental thing. I can understand it now that I have many kids. What the confusion or what the dilemma would be and waiting, deciding, do I tell them? Do I tell them now? Do I tell them later?
Hmm.
Uh, I guess I was starting to not look like anybody else in the family except my mother. So they made the decision to tell me at that age. And unfortunately, my mother told me the only thing she knew about him was that he was Italian and that he was in the Navy, but that he wanted to be a gigolo. And I was like, really, Mom? That's all you know about my dad? And it was like, but then I started reading Italian mafia books for some reason. I thought, well, maybe it was, maybe there's some mafia, a link to our family. And of course, the big daydreamer I was. So, um, yeah, I started reading a lot of like The Last Mafioso by Jimmy Fratellino. Reading a lot about these guys who had turned,
Hmm.
and had become informants. And I thought, I remember reading all these books and thinking, wow, that's cool. That's cool. Then I ended up in prison and I was with some of the people that wrote those books. And I was like,
Oh, really?
wow, this is what I aspired to be. I think
Yeah, yeah.
I made the wrong choice here.
So at 15, you have the police interaction that leads to you becoming an informant for the first time, correct? And can you tell us a bit about that experience? And at that time, I imagine the rules are very different than they are now. Um, but
That's an understatement.
yeah, what were the rules around then, or were there none? So just what was the situation?
Yeah, I think it was just do as you need to.
Yeah.
It was, the first, and obviously I know a lot more about that world now from the policing side. So, I mean, back then I just thought I was ratting somebody else, and I said that ratting somebody out, and I've always said that to people. I get that there's a difference in law between a source, informant, and agent,
Hmm.
but not to the guys in the streets that are doing it. We're not deciding, whether you call me a source or whether you call me an agent or whether you call me this. I'm just a rat to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe they're telling you along the way, but you're just not hearing it because it's screaming loud in your head that what you're really doing.
So you were saying you're getting more directed to do things at that time.
I think there was a little bit more direction involved. Yeah, I think in especially in the early years for sure. I mean, at 15, I was probably asked. I don't know if I would say they directed me the first time. The first time they just said, "You want to make $20," and just tell me where Kevin's weed is, and I was like, "Sure, I'll take that." And took the $20, and I ran all the way to his house. And I said, "You got to hide your weed. The cops are coming." And he says, "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, because they just gave me $20 to tell them where it was." And he got rid of the weed, and I actually didn't do that again, but it was tempting. And Kevin was always trying to get me to set something up. But I didn't. I just continued being loyal to the police, unfortunately.
So did this start your kind of your thrill-seeking adventures? Because you talk a lot about that in the book, where it's almost the adrenaline rush of doing a lot of this stuff. So is that kind of the start of a lot of these things?
I think there's more of the kudos from the different officers.
Hmm.
Well, definitely when it gets later on to Cabana, but even in the earlier ones, there's the couple guys in Nova Scotia, and I still have contact with one. I would say that it was more kudos in a lot of ways, but you have to again. It's a multiple. In one of my books, I think it was the first one or second. No, it was the second one. I put motivations of an informant.
Yeah,
and I guess when I'm speaking at a source handling course, I would say there's not one motive that drives one person. Like usually, there's a multitude of reasons. It may be money one day, but it may be, and I think that's the biggest misconception amongst police officers is they believe everybody's money driven.
Yeah.
So they're always trying to get people with they think finance. Because I see the posts on LinkedIn even. They just want money. Well, yes, in a way, they like power.
Yeah.
They like control. But that comes in lots of forms, not just cash. So,
Yeah.
The drug dealing is a form of power.
Yeah, and
Right?
I 100% agree. I think most of the people that I've been a handler for have
Yeah.
not been interested in money at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they don't even ask about it, or even if if I'm the one who asks, it's
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about that. But anyways, let me tell you about all these other things. So
Yeah.
they really are. There's other motivations, whether it's to eliminate competition,
Yeah.
or some do it for reasons like you're saying. There are almost innumerable amount, and they
Yeah.
change all the time. So like every little bit of info, you're kind of asking like, well, why are you telling me this, or why is this important now? So yeah, I think you got a good point.
I think too that are always there and I've talked to a lot of informants over the last, since I started writing the books, because a lot of people contact me. I would say the two number one reasons though that are always there is the kudos from the officer. They love the pats on the back, and that could have a lot to do with the fatherlessness issue and in the country. But then there's the the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. Like you're always having to make up for your conscience. Nobody escapes their conscience. And I don't even believe if you're a psychopath. I know that's an argument lots would like to have, but I believe everybody's conscience is convicting them, and they have to deal with that somehow. So no matter what, if you're out in the crime world doing crime, you're going to harden towards it. And you're going to harden in, and that conscience might be really, really faint for some as opposed to others. But if you've got a touch of empathy in you at all, it's hard to be a criminal without dealing with that.
Yeah.
So if there's empathy in you and you're in the criminal world and you're watching the things that you're doing, or you're even being introspective in the slightest bit, you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes that's by feeding information. For me, it was a lot of the times it was like, yeah, I'm only doing this, this, and this, but I'm giving them all the violent people I can. And I really did try to stick to just violent offenders because it made me feel better about me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say I like taking violent offenders off the street. I don't know if I really cared back then. I was just doing a job in my head. It was, you know, and when you see police just doing it as, most police officers, even they get caught up in that game. So it's just about the takedown and the takedown party after. Um, well, in the same sense, you see it as a game all the time because they see it as a game. So everybody seems to, forget the human element.
Yeah, you're kind of losing sight of the real goal.
Yeah.
Actually, and with the stuff you're mentioning, I'm going to jump to a question I was
Yeah.
going to ask way
Sure.
later, but you bring up some really good points. And you talk about this in the book, and I thought this was like one of the really good parts about the mind of somebody involved in this lifestyle. So you seem very self-aware of your actions and the impact that they had on other people. Do you think at that time you weren't maybe as aware, or now looking back, you think maybe you were more aware than you were? Because what I'm trying to get at here is, if you did realize, hey, all these things I'm doing are having a serious impact beyond just the person I'm dealing with, like it could impact the families and then the police and the community. Why do you think you never stopped or stopped other people or just got out of the lifestyle altogether with what you were seeing from your actions?
Yeah, I would say that I see it. There's lots of places where I deliberately left people out and didn't get them arrested, that I
Mhm.
could have. And then same is true on the other side. There's lots of people that I deliberately went out of my way to find and get. So whether I can remember in my mind whether I was caring or I often I hear my daughter say, in relation to today, because she was with me all through that. She was born in '85, so not that long after I started, and she grew with me. And she says lots of times today, "Yeah, but you were like that back then, Dad. You know,
Mm.
you were always trying to save these drug dealers back then. Like, every time somebody was trying, you were always trying to get them off of drugs back then. You know, now is she seeing me through a daughter's eyes? Sure. Do I remember, all these things that she says I did back then? No, but there's a lot of stress in it. Every time you're doing an operation or doing that work, and she didn't know about that work, so she was always seeing me as the worst drug dealer ever because I was trying to get people off of drugs.
Mhm. Yeah.
She was it's kind of ruining your business, Dad. Like, what's your issue? Like, and my ex-wives would say that too. Like, you're the worst drug dealer we know. Like, you don't want to make money off them. And it's true, I didn't because I only seen them as a way to get into other circles. You know, there was lots of things you could use it for. So did I know? I must have known something
Yeah.
if I was doing that. At this point, I can only go by a lot of things people said to me.
And I think that's a very interesting perspective because you're involved in something, and this is for anybody, like whatever you're involved in,
Mm,
you have the firsthand account of what's going on, but people see it from outside. They maybe see something you don't see.
yeah,
They also miss a lot of context of what's going on. So they don't have the full story.
yeah,
It is kind of, I guess your situation is very unique in that you're, it's almost like you took on the job of the agent informant as your job, right? And
yeah,
so you're not looking to be, the next leader of the cartel or Hell's Angels or whatever it is, but you were getting the thrill and the excitement from doing these operations. So you're just working to get from job to job, operation to operation, as you kind of describe in the books. So
yeah.
yeah, that's very. I don't think I've ever heard anybody have that experience within the world, but I know from my own handling, you do kind of see that with some of the people involved, where they seem to kind of come out and tell you certain things, and you're like, well, then why are you involved? Like, if you don't really want to be involved, then why? And
Yeah.
they don't really ever have the words or the means to describe it. But I think you've kind of nailed it on the head the way you're describing some of this stuff.
It's interesting because I was watching a movie just a couple nights, some show my wife was watching, Suits, as a
Hmm.
lawyer. And one of the characters was in a cell and he had to inform on his cellmate. And he had become friends with the cellmate, and they were starting to trust each other and protect each other in prison. And I had to fast forward it. I had to get it off. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to watch this. Like, move it along. It was really bringing back. I ended up watching it the next night. It was just happened to be that night. I wasn't in any mind frame for it, I guess, because it was. But what it reminded me of was that bond between people and having to break bread with people and then walk away, break bread and walk away. And undercover operators, that work for, say, the RCMP, which is who I did most of my work for, they get debriefed at the end of every operation. There's no debriefing for me. So the operation ends. I'm hated by both sides. Not hated. I'm used by one and hated by the other.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I guess there's a fair share of hate amongst the police. Certain members of the police like me no more than the people that I went after. So you end up in this lone, middle ground where it's very depressing, and you have to somehow bring yourself out after every operation and go to something else, go to another one. And I think that's what that was reminding me of, is this breaking bread and then putting people away, because a lot of people are, they're likable. You don't have to like what they've done, but they can be likable people.
Yeah.
And that becomes very difficult, after a few years.
I get that sense too from some of the people I talk with. It's, you're one of the only consistent people in their lives. You're kind of the anchor to the normal world, I guess, society, and the way everyone else is choosing to live their life, right, in the community.
Yeah.
And they go, your informant or agent goes deep into this certain lifestyle, and they might not even like it, or they try to find a way out, but they can't. And then you get the calls at 2 a.m, right? And the person's not doing good. And
you don't get those, do you?
you gotta talk them off the ledge, so to speak.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I always found that part fascinating. So just the whole psychology of it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll kind of continue down this path. We'll get to talking about the handlers later.
Sure.
But what do you think is a way to get somebody out of these, out of this lifestyle? And I'll come back and ask that again, but just to kind of contextualize it. When we have programs here called off ramping, and we try to get people out of the lifestyle. It's very difficult for a whole lot of reasons, but it depends almost on the person you're talking to. So we have people in the street gang,
100%.
and the street gang, they might have one or no parents. They might have nobody that gives them safety and security, that provides for them. So the gang provides that.
Yeah.
But when we talk about someone such as yourself or some of these guys who are kind of elevated, they have that family structure. They've got some things in their life, some pillars to kind of fall back on. So I'm just wondering, kind of, what's your take on, like, how would you get somebody out of it? Maybe we'll stick more with your context. How do you get someone out of this lifestyle? Like, as police, I can't offer you money and women. So, it's like, oh, hey, you want to just come hang out and on days off? Like, I don't know what we would provide. So what would someone look for?
I think 98% of the criminal world is probably dealing with fatherless issues. At least from when I was in prison, that's what I seen was the biggest issue. They all had, and that fatherlessness doesn't mean the father's not there. Physically, it means he could be not there emotionally. He's not there. He's an alcoholic. He's a workaholic. He's a sexaholic. He's a whatever-aholic. But whatever it is, he's just not there to provide that stability and really at a particular age too. I think it matters as a boy is coming into age. That he has that father figure there that is going to bring him from boyhood to manhood. So I think with that in mind, what can you do? Well, you got to come back to and show. Well, here's a better way to help maybe understand why did I finally walk away from it. It had nothing to do. I remember in 96, 97, I walked away from the crime life pretty much. I knew I wanted out of that. I was just looking for that last operation to quit for good. I
Hmm.
just wanted one big one, and I knew I had one lined up already from before. So I thought I'll just work on that one because I know it's a good one. But when I was in prison, I'd read this book by Michael Glasser. It's called Reality Therapy, I believe. But it was about it doesn't matter what it's about. What it did for me was it helped me understand consequences being closer and closer apart. So one of the problems with the court system and the way we look at the court system right now is everybody wants to give everybody breaks and let everybody out, and and then the other side is just like, we got to think about the victims and the victims only. And think, yeah, you're both right. Both in both way, both have merit to them.
Yep.
But what can we do to take the criminals and show that their consequence is now? Like, their action is here, their consequence is now. It can't. The longer you drag that on, eventually they don't recognize the consequence.
Okay.
Like, I remember when I first went, because I would get out, and they let me out on my own reconnaissance, and I go on the run for 14, 15 months.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, so I get picked up on a warrant at some point, and I go, yeah, okay, so it's time for me to go do the time for that. But you didn't really attach that time to that offense. You didn't really see it as, you knew it was part of the game. You knew you were always going to jail. You knew that was just part of what the world you were in. But it wasn't until I was put in prison, in a federal prison for the first time, that I realized you can't run from anything in there. First of all, you can't run from a fight. You can't talk your way out of a fight.
Okay.
Your consequences now. You're dealing with everything right now.
So it's the immediacy of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when I started seeing, wow, everything I'm doing right now affects me. So I seen, action and then the equal reaction. It was just, I think that's what helped me the most. And after that was, and I'll skip forward to it, how I've helped people get out of that world. I helped this one guy, and he had never, he was a native guy that never seen, since residential school, he had never been out of a group home prison for more than 6 months. And he was the same age as me, and I'm 59 now. So, and I took him and I showed him, first of all, I gave him some, just love. I said, here's a place to live, because I had some properties at the time. I said, here's a place to live. Here's a couch. Here's a chair. He brought him some groceries. And then I got an old work truck for him and showed him how to start a company. I showed him how to start a corporation, because he had great skills. He was a great painter, and he was really good at roofing and painting and stuff like that. And most people in prison do have skills like that. So I got him a work truck, got him a business, just a small corporation set up for himself, and showed him how to do all this. Then I went with him to jobs. I showed him how to do business cards and how to get, how to go out and look for contracts. And I gave him pep talks on a constant basis. Invited him over on Father's Day, for a barbecue. Found out when his birthday was. Showed him that I cared. Spent time with him. Wasn't that me and him necessarily had anything really in common. I just knew that you could see that he wanted out. He just didn't have any hope that he could do anything. Once you have a criminal record, you don't really believe you can ever. What's the point? Like, what is the point in me changing? If I have a criminal record, I'm never going to be able to cross the border. I'm never going to be able to do this. All you think about is all the things I'm never going to be able to do. You got to get them out of that mindset of, here's all the things you're going to be able to do. So let's work on those. There's more money in this world than there is in that world, because you get to keep it in this world.
Yeah.
You don't get to keep it in your world, because
without the threat of death.
Well, yeah, in the criminal world, it's going away one way or another. Whether you die or go to prison, there is no great ending for any criminal. Everybody can think whatever they want about the crime world having a great ending. There is no great ending. You can't keep that money. You can't keep that house. You can't get. It's all going. It's just a matter of whether you're going to die before they take it from you. That's the only, or you're going to end up in witness protection, and I can assure you that's no fun. So, So you got to show them, first of all, that there's no real ending to the world they're in, and those things that you think you're not going to have or you can't do are all things that you're able to fix.
Okay. So it sounds almost like you kind of need a handler, maybe more towards like a counselor side of things for somebody who is looking to get out of that lifestyle, because you do need to provide. Well, again, you're providing kind of that anchor, right? You're that tether to normal society, normal functional society, and you can show them, okay, we don't always have to focus on the negatives. There are positives that, and then just working right step by step, kind of get
Yeah.
through that. Very interesting. I've never had anybody ever kind of come up with an idea of how to really solve the problem for especially our guys that are like, making a lot of money and
Yeah.
they're just eating at fancy restaurants all day and night and it's women everywhere. And again, I only say that because it's mostly dudes, but there are a lot of girls involved in this lifestyle too that have their own motives.
There's
Um,
no shortage.
so, well, and on that, and you brought up the justice system a little bit. This is something I've been trying to get someone in here to talk about, kind of on the remand and the whether it's the provincial or federal side. When you go in and you spend time inside, I think there's a huge misconception that it's like the gulag over here, and they're like throwing you in a dark hole and just leaving you there. I've done walkthroughs through our remand center. I don't think I've ever been through the federal one, like our Fort Saskatchewan yard. But what is the experience like inside? Is it kind of like you see in the American shows? I don't think there are any Canadian ones, so I'll use Americans as reference. But um, and then what are they doing inside of there to make people better, reform them, get them ready for the outside world? Like what's happening in there on that side?
Yeah. Um, well, the lunatics run the asylum, so I wouldn't say they're doing anything substantial, and I hate to say
Okay.
that, I really do.
No, fair enough.
But I think if somebody wants to change, they'll change. Um, Putting them in prison is prisons are good for protecting society in the sense that you need to lock people away. Some people need to be locked away. Just that simple. Now, I'm not a proponent for getting rid of prisons. In fact, I think we should build more. And I think that we should actually put people in there that should be in there, though. I think there's lots of ways to do it. Um, First of all, prison itself, let's look at the prisons themselves. Is it like the American side? No. Yes, in a sense. Do people get raped in there? Yes. Do people get beat in there? Do people get stabbed in there? Absolutely, but not in a 2 hour span. Do all those things happen? It's not like watching a movie where you see a rape, a stabbing, and a beating all on the in a small time period. But I was in just under 5 years in federal penitentiary, and yes, all of those things happen. And so, to me, what is the the negative of being in prison? Oddly enough, I enjoyed prison. I took advantage of it, and I had many experiences. And I'm not suggesting we should go. I mean, I had throat cancer, and I enjoyed that experience too. And but because it's what I did with it, though, right? It's like when I went to prison, I said, okay, I'm going to read a book every day that I'm here, and I'm not going to read any fiction. So I'm just going to read every day one book, no matter what. And I set myself to, and I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to spend my time working out. So for me, it was what I did with prison. It wasn't prison itself. And the people there weren't of help to me. I guess aside from them bringing the books into the prison, and having them available.
They don't put you on any programs, nothing, or at least ones that work.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's programs, and God love them. There's people. I remember one guy that came in to do the OSEP program, which is an offender. It's a drug program type thing, and he was going to change the world, and you could see he really meant well. And I could just see like, oh, that's going to last a week. And about 3 months later, that guy was walking around like, I hate this place. I hate people. He wasn't even talking nice to anybody anymore. Just like jaded, hardcore. in 3 months, they destroyed them, right? And it's like, I mean, every inmate is in there, and this is good for police to understand, because if you want to understand policing, criminals are in there in this university with, so you got all these guards. Well, all they are is police to them. It's the same thing,
Yep.
right? Most prisons are built just like the hoods in every city. So, your units look like the courtyards of any housing project. So it's just like there's no, they're transferring from one housing project to a different housing project
Yeah.
with just walls and guards over top of them. So, but now they get to, in a 200, 300 people, with whatever amount of guards, 400 guards or whatever it might be around them, and they get to study those
Mhm.
guards just like the guards study them. It's just a game in there to learn. So I mean, you really get to understand policing almost just from the way they do it in there, and how to manipulate officers. I mean, that's the big goal. Can I get this guy? Can I bend this guy? Can I get him to break and bring me in a bottle? Can I get him to bring me in some dope? Can I get him to take my money out? Or can I get her? Because more often we obviously targeted women uh, guards than any. But it's the same in the street.
Yeah.
You're still looking, you're still trying to turn that cop all the time. You still want to get that cop to turn. And we know that they're already facing every sin there is that that can come in front of them. I mean, the money is there in front of them every day. The dope is in front of them. The women are in front of them every day. So you can see which ones are weaker, which ones have the strength to stay away from it, and you can see the ones that are like having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And everybody targets them. So cops need to learn that on a regular basis. They have to have such a strong moral compass.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
First thing I used to say at a source handling course is, you chose to be a police officer uh, because you didn't want to live within rules. I chose to be because you wanted to live within the rules. I chose to be a criminal because I didn't want to live within the rules. So stay within them.
Yeah.
know?
Well, what's funny about that is the more you kind of see the criminal element and the kind of the deeper you go into these sides, you see that like that is almost one of the only things that separates the two, is like one believes in following a certain set of rules and should try to stay
Yeah,
within them. But when you talk about like your lifestyle, well, everybody's got their vice, everybody's still committing their sins.
yeah,
When I look at like the biker side of things, they say they want to live on the outside of society, the one percenters, yet you join a group
yeah,
that has very rigid structure and hierarchy, and you still
yeah,
follow rules when you're in there. So,
yeah,
it's just, I find it funny, but I think it's like, it's such an interesting world when you kind of
yeah,
look at, when you take a step back and look at like, okay, what is everybody doing? We're all in this big game. And what
yeah.
role are we kind of filling in here? Uh, on that, I do want to ask, and when you're talking about inside, but even on the outside, what are criminals saying about police? What do they think? What do they say about the justice system? Kind of what are the overarching thoughts on
Yeah.
what's kind of going on and how effective they are? Like, are they running scared from us, or are we not being effective enough? So,
I think for the most part, from my perspective of watching over the years, there's two groups of people: um, those that hate you and those that couldn't care less about you.
yeah,
Like, I mean, really, and I know lots of police officers would like to think that there's a lot of different uh, types, but there really isn't. I mean, we either just don't care, we're not paying attention to you. I mean, we're watching you. Like, I wouldn't, I don't know the best way to describe that. So yes, there's the job of what we have to do with police officers, because you have to, once you get to a certain level, you've got to be able to do counter surveillance, and you've got to be able to do things too. If you're going to, be at any level of the game that is important,
yes,
you know, if you're going to succeed. Um, but aside from that, you don't give them. It's not like you're worrying about them if that's your way. You're wondering. We're not. I wouldn't say any people are sitting around going, "Oh, the cops." It's like if you're cutting up a key of coke, you're like, you put somebody over there and say, "Watch, if somebody comes through, you better shoot." I better hear gunshots before they get my door. So, but it's not. It's like that's part of doing business. Just it's nothing to do with the cop or the. Then there's those. There's the other people that you see and I would say more in prison that I see. It's a hatred for cops and just a despising them and just they despise that authority figure in that uniform. But for the most part, no, I don't know if I've ever really sat around worrying about police officers because I've always been of the opinion, and I went to jail early. So I went at 16. And one of the first things I was taught by an American who got busted with a boatload of weed in Nova Scotia, a guy was named Doug Roberts from Winter Park, Orlando, Florida, outside of Orlando, Florida. And he taught me a lot of things. But he said, Paul, the police can only bring you to the court. You can't do anything else, right? The judge is the one that actually decides whether you go into jail. Why do you worry about them so much?
Yeah.
And it's true. And what have they infiltrated the most? Lawyers and judges. Because that's where the danger of going to jail is. Why worry about the cop? You're just picking me up and holding me for 72 hours at best.
I think that gets lost in what a lot of the media puts out. And I would also add in the politicians and stuff. The police are like the convenient scapegoat, always in the middle. They're the punching bag for both sides. But at the end of the day, we are the eyes and ears and to an effect, I guess, the hands of the system, right? Our main function is to compel people to court, right? Stop the violence, stop property damage, and then compel you to court.
Yeah.
And then we pretty much end there, right? Now, there's obviously disclosure and evidence gathering and stuff, but we don't make any decisions after that point. It's up to the lawyers and the judges.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who determine the sentence or whether we're setting someone free. And that's kind of what still comes back on police. So,
always.
Yeah, good point. When you're talking about the organized crime side of things, and this is more specific for the OMG stuff, I'm wondering, is it fair to say not all people in the group are involved in criminality? So there's some people who joined and made their way in just to be a part of a club, or does everybody have to be doing some kind of criminal element in there? And I ask that because we know, obviously, with some of the groups we deal with here, there are people who it's overt. We know they're involved in crime. There's some who are a little smarter, a little more sneaky. But then there's like a lot in there that you're like, I really don't know what that guy does. So I'm just wondering, like, what level of criminal involvement does somebody have to be in that group in particular? And also on that, I guess, why join? If you know they're a criminal group, why get involved if you're not doing crime?
Well, I would say two things to that. I think, at least from my day on, I don't know what it would be like on the inside today, but I'm guessing it's not any different. To get to that place, how do you even get there? So if you go on their website, and so go on the HA website, and so what do they tell you? Well, if you don't know how to join, you probably can't.
Yes.
Obviously, you have to learn to. Yeah, you have to do a certain amount of crime even to get to that level of crime, or to that level. There's no innocent Hell's Angels, if that's what you're wondering. No, it's propaganda, right? We want to say they want to say they're good old boys, and no, they're all criminals, and they all live on the blood and the tears of the vulnerable of society, and they're cowards. And I'm not saying that there's not people in there that are likable. Everybody has somebody that loves them, but so did Charles Manson and Hitler. That doesn't mean I want them roaming around society.
Yeah.
And so no, you have to reach that level by committing crimes, and money has always helped get people. If you're a moneymaker, you can get close to or closer to. And of course, you could probably even get into the club, I guess, if you had enough money. I would be suspicious of anybody that
Just
got
paying
in.
their way in.
I don't think that's high. Like, the only thing I'm trying to think of is, you see someone like Jay Dobbins. I love the work he did, but um, how does an undercover actually get a made man? Well, I think in the U.S., maybe you'll see a little bit more of that ability to get in, being a tough guy, or maybe you get away with a little more down there. But I think in Canada, no, you're not getting in a clubhouse without ever having committed crimes. Lots of them.
What do you think of the people in there? Is it like, I always kind of describe them from my interactions, because we have 3 chapters here, is
Yeah.
they come across as very broken individuals.
Mhm.
And like you say, cowards. I think that is a big part of it, because
Mhm.
everybody's very different when you talk to them one-on-one, but all of a sudden you got 40 guys standing around you and this guy really likes to mouth off. And it's like,
Yeah.
I get it. You're putting on the show. But,
Yeah.
it's just kind of what kind of person do we generally see when we're talking about the OMG culture?
I think when you get up to the level, if you're talking about in the clubhouse, I mean,
Mhm.
surrounding associates and stuff like that, I think are a little different. But the guys in the clubhouse, like when I was in and around the Halifax chapter, I was at meetings where people's lives were being decided. And I think, and even an ex-member at one point, and I think they're quick to, there's some that are very professional about what they do. They understand the club as a business.
Mhm.
And I think those guys are sitting there making rational decisions, and most of those guys come from good families that I've seen. Come from good families, good backgrounds, understand business. Could have been anything in life. They can function amongst. Well, you just look at Mum Bouchard. I mean, guys playing in an orchestra and going to the ballet, and living a life of normalcy, and then killing correctional officers, ordering the killing of correctional officers on the
Yeah.
side, and anybody else he saw fit. So there's those guys though who are street thugs who came up and worked their way up, and they get to the top, and that's how they see it as a business. And then there's the sergeant of arms who should, I've always said anybody that takes that job is, I mean, it's like taking the job of the commissioner of the RCMP. It's the dumbest thing. There's no amount of money you can give me to take that job, because
Yeah.
you're going to out. I mean, yes, I get you're leaving with a pension, but do you really need to leave with your dignity, your integrity, and your reputation gone just to have a few dollars? I mean, you just can't win. And it's kind of like the sergeant of arms. Like, they come and say, "Hey, I'm going to be the sergeant. You're going to be the sergeant at arms." I'm like, "No way!" Like, that means I'm going to be dead as soon as the next guy that rats you guys out, I die.
Yeah.
I've never understood that. But so you got those guys that are the mouth. They're usually the mouthpieces, and you've got all those puppet clubs, and I guess those guys are the more dangerous guys. Most of the Hell's Angels that I've met that are at the top, they aren't even riding bikes. They don't even ride their bikes on their runs. They have them brought out, and
Yeah.
they're driving Lexus, Mercedes, whatever. So, I mean, it's all the underlings that do the work. That's why it's a pyramid. So everybody down at the bottom gets the time and gets.
And again, this goes back to like, it's mind blowing to me that someone wants to be like a 30, 40-year-old guy, and you're at someone's beck and call. You're going there to cut the grass. You're setting up the parties. You're hauling their bike wherever. And it's just like, go get your own family and do your own thing at this point, right?
Yep.
One thing I want to ask you though is, how come you didn't join? Like, what made you choose to be so close to all this, but never officially in or trying to do anything on that side of it?
I could never understand why I would do all the work and give them my money.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
just I couldn't get by that one. And I really didn't want to wear a silly jacket. Like, those things both really kind of always stood out to me as dumb. Like, but I didn't want to join any kind of little club when I was a kid either. I mean, I just didn't see the point of it. I had all the same benefits hanging around them. Like, I had the same women, the same power to use his patch. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sitting at a bar and I'm with you. I mean, I'm getting just as much respect as you are.
Yeah.
You know, it's maybe a little bit less respect, but I'm from the most of the people, they just see me as him. So why would I give up my money and everything I have and my time and my freedom to do what I want? I mean, it seems like I should have just not became a criminal.
Yeah. Hey, I think, you know what, there's certainly, and just going back to when you're talking about the type of people in the club, there are levels of intelligence. Like it varies greatly, just like it does in police. And, you know, I think you have a really good point. It's an interesting point of view as well. Just like, yeah, I'm getting, 90% of the benefits without all that other bullshit. Like,
Yeah,
why would I bother with it?
yeah,
So, yeah, no,
yeah,
it makes sense. You know what? And I could ask you a million questions on a lot of this stuff, but I'll
yeah,
switch to the informant handling side. This is a
yeah.
big part of what you talk about as well. You go through the book, you talk a lot about the characteristics of a good handler and the kind of person that they need to be. And obviously, your experience with Cabana.
Yeah.
And sorry, the other person's name is escaping me right now.
Shane Halliday.
Halliday. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a good experience. You've had bad experiences. Can you just talk a little bit about the characteristics that you mentioned in your book? Because I want, if people haven't read your book,
Yeah.
I highly suggest they get it. I think they're on sale on your website right now too. So good time to get them.
Yeah. Yeah. They are actually.
But can you talk a little bit about the good characteristics? And I'll kind of segue that after into a little bit on leadership and some of the things that I see from my side.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
tell us about your experiences.
I think one is empathy for sure. Empathy's got to be up at the top. If you can't, one of the things that Cabana used to say all the time to me, because I asked him many times, how he does what he does. He said, look, not everybody had the same lot in life. And, that's so true. I mean, he was able to put himself in other people's shoes, even though he wasn't that person. And I think that's important. And I think Shane Halliday, likewise, he was a very he is a very he's got a tough exterior, and I still talk to Shane today, even though Shane was the one who arrested me in the murder. We've become best friends, over the last 25 years. But he has a big heart, and he feels for people, and he understands that people are people, and not what they did. So, I mean, I think if you don't see that part, you don't see that people, if you don't see, but for the grace of God, there go I. Like that could very well be you over there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that made you be born in the right family at the right time, at the right, and not end up being that person? So I think that would be number one: empathy, understanding that we have to have that, and I think a moral compass that's strong. I think that so somebody that really adheres to a strong moral compass, I can give lots of suggestions, but I would say that if you don't have something objective to guide your life, then you're always going to be subjective in your decision making,
Mm.
and that's dangerous. Even if the criminal code is your most objective moral compass, that's fine. It'll make you very rigid, and it'll keep you but you got to have something that guides you outside of yourself. And I got to know I can't bend you. Like, don't try to talk cool to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to be like me, because the last thing I want from a handler is somebody who's like me. I already know what I'm like. Like, if you're like me, then we're in trouble. I'm going to die in an operation somewhere. Like, I want you to be a cop and show me that I can't bend you, and you will put me in jail, and you are rigid when it comes to the law.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would I trust you? How can I trust my life with somebody that is malleable and that I can twist and turn and manipulate into whatever I want?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what you want for a handler. And if people are picking them on that, then they're going to have a bad experience for sure.
I think you bring up a good point there is, talking about that rigidity and, there is a degree of discretion to be had on things. So the criminal code, like, you could just go by the letter of the law. You
Yeah.
will have a lot of people hate you. Probably a lot of other cops that have to deal with you, and the
Yeah.
amount of paper you generate. But there's,
Exactly.
there's the discretion, and you mix that with empathy. So again, this, and I've had this conversation on here many times, where you're talking about the gray zone, right? And
Yeah.
I guess we could even say it might even be a bit of that thin blue line, where it's like,
Yeah.
there's very little that separates normal society from the criminal side, and we're just choosing to follow certain rules. And, you know, for police, you got to walk these lines, because you do need, like, we wouldn't solve any big cases without
Mm.
informants or agents.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we don't use them enough, and we're
Yeah.
good with the photo ops for, a couple bricks. But if we want to
Yeah.
make any real impact, have any real change,
Yeah.
you have to have people that are involved in the criminal element helping you.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. So
Absolutely.
you need, like you're saying, you need people with the empathy and the character to kind of take the reins and lead in that world.
Yeah.
Because it is a difficult one. And like you're saying again, you say this a ton in your book, how you're
Mhm.
manipulating the handler, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're doing certain things for certain reasons. You have your own motives.
Yeah.
I can see that when I'm talking to people, and they start asking questions, right? Like, they're digging back,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
I can't tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that, right? Or they're just asking their question a different way, trying to get something. So
It's a boxing match. Like I've said in my
yeah,
book, you got to throw a punch, and you got to be able to take a punch to throw a punch. But you're never in a boxing match where you're the only one throwing or receiving, right?
yeah,
Like, so it doesn't matter. We're having a conversation. I'm getting information. Now, informants and agents, the good ones, obviously, are very good at sucking information. It becomes second nature to them. So it's nonstop. I mean, my kids hate it in my house, but I
they
mean,
can't get anything past you.
because I'm like a sponge of information in my house. Like, I just suck up information. It's like I'm doing it to my family constantly. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? I'm causing them all PTSD.
It's just kind of, as we come to the end of our time here, I want to just make sure I give you the chance to kind of say a bit about the author side of things. So, because I could keep you here on all these topics. This is fascinating stuff. But you went from the criminal side, and you're doing the trials.
Yeah.
Now you're into authoring. So how did that kind of start, and where did the books and this whole thing, like, where'd that idea come
Yeah.
from?
The first one treacherous started with, I got tired of watching the media butcher my story. And I knew the RCMP were never going to put out any kind of communications that said who I really was. I didn't want my children to grow up and read only that side of the story. I wanted them to know. So Treacherous is in some ways a boring read, because it's heavy on the document side and proof side. I wanted to make sure I was able to prove anything that I said. So I tried to use a lot of excerpts of documents, but I tried to just tell the truth and tell my story. Now, unfortunately, at that time, I was still going through trials, so I had to be cognizant of the fact that I couldn't say a lot about what went on the RCMP side, and I know that sounds like I must have a lot more to say than I do. That's why my book's coming out. But I didn't want to take a chance on anybody getting an appeal based on something I wrote.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure I was careful, but tell my story at least in and around what happened in the murder. Now the books after that, after I wrote Treacherous, and I thought I did a good job of telling, that I wasn't the monster that media painted me out to be, that I'd actually been doing this for 20 years at that time, approximately. Then I wanted to write inside a police informant's mind, because I wanted to make a difference. And Cabana had worked his way up through the ranks at that time. And he was an inspector, then chief superintendent. And then he ended up being the deputy commissioner. And I was like, wow, I might actually be able to get this in the hands of police officers now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I wrote Inside a Police Informant's Mind. So I really aimed at credibility on that one. So I went through Taylor Francis. That's where it was first published. And because they published textbooks, I thought, I'll go through them. It will be peer reviewed then. And it was peer reviewed by FBI, Homeland Security. And then I had the RCMP research chair at Simon Fraser wrote the foreword. So I had a lot of people read it, including the RCMP. I gave it to them to read too.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then I started speaking for them at source handling courses. So that's a whole other story to see how that came. That's in my next book, the one that's about to come out. But I wrote that because I wanted to make sure I could touch as many handlers as I could, because if I could touch the handlers, I can touch the informants. I can get, good handling will lead to informants being in less danger.
Yeah.
But less agents being in danger. And after that, after I wrote that one, I started thinking about, well, by that time I had, I guess, that came out in 2019. So I had 19 years in witness protection. Well, that's a whole nother beast. So, but it's attached to the same thing, right? Like most informants and agents are going to end up either dead, in prison, or in witness protection. And more in witness protection than the others. So I seen how intricately they were attached. And I thought, I got to write something so people know and can make an informed decision as to whether they should come into this program.
Yeah.
And so that's where that book came from. And there's actually, and then that's the RCMP Witness Protection Pros and Cons book. I haven't released it yet because there's still a lot of legal issues I'm getting around.
Yeah.
And then the Horseman's Whore. I think the title speaks for itself.
Great name.
Yeah. And that's going to be the name of the documentary. And if I have any say in the movie, then it'll be the name of the movie as well. That one is my life story, just from 15, really. My life story with the RCMP, though. All the background to all of the other stuff that you've read. What was going on with me and the RCMP on a continuous basis. And that'll open the eyes of a lot of people.
That's great stuff. And as someone who's involved in the gang world right now, and I'm in a world of, that puts me there with violence and all these organized crime groups, like I'm reading these books and this stuff is real. Like it still happens today. So I can say I back these books, and I would tell people these are issues that are still ongoing. So the more education we could get out there, the better that we can make police officers and fix things before they're a massive problem. And also make it safer for the public, right? And that includes the informants and the agents. So we're just trying to make sure we do the best that we can. We're just at the end of our time. I want to give you the opportunity to just tell people how to find you and your work.
Yeah, you can go to www. It's just 3 W's, not 2. www.paulderry.ca or just horseman'swhore.com.
Awesome. And I know on your website it has the links to all your social media. When I get this episode out, I'll put all that stuff in the episode description with some links to your website. Man, it was awesome having you on here today. I want to say thanks, and we'll end the recording, but I'll chat with you very briefly offline.
So thanks for having me.